something in there I need.
And what would that be?
I'm getting those pricks out of that house.
Oh, your first attempt being such a wild success.
You may know this whole PI sit in the car business, but I know meth heads.
What does he do in his fun time? Probably visual things. His primary visual intake, since he's going to be focused on doing visual things. The other thing we talked about is he's not a typically social person, could be seen as odd or weird. He has a drastic need to control because he has such a low self-esteem, such a low self-worth. Tries to cover that up with his pathological narcissism. So by being the guy, the man in control. I believe too, porno, violent porno. I mean, it's all over the internet. Violent porno is.
In 2005, Dr. Eric Nestler wrote a landmark paper describing all addiction as a dysfunction of the mesolimbic reward centers of the brain. Addiction occurs when pathways are hijacked by exogenous drugs or by natural processes essential and inherent to survival, such as food and sex. Both pornography and substance use trigger changes in the brain's reward pathway systems, increasing levels of the neurotransmitter dopamine. Of the most commonly abused drugs in the Midwest and relevant to our story here is methamphetamine, a synthetic stimulant that affects the central nervous system. Abuse of the drug is a serious problem in the United States, often resulting in devastating medical, psychological, social, and legal consequences. Meth is typically known as a rural drug for several reasons. First and foremost, it's easily manufactured using over-the-counter and household ingredients, and the relative isolation of rural communities can aid in meth production, keeping it on the low key as the fumes often go unnoticed. And finally, the economic devastation of rural areas sadly can entice residents to abuse the drug.
During the 3.5 years that I went back and forth to Old Wine, Iowa, I told myself that I was searching for the meaning of meth in small-town America. That is certainly true, but I think I was also looking for the meaning of a small town in my own life and in my family's history. And what, if anything, had changed so profoundly that when I would tell my father what I was seeing in Iowa, he was made to wonder if he would even recognize the place whence he comes. Rural America remains the cradle of our national creation myth, but it has become something else too, something more sinister and difficult to define. Whether meth changed our perception of the American small town or simply brought to light the fact that things in small town America are much changed is in some ways irrelevant. In my telling, meth has always been less an agent of change and more a symptom of it. The end of a way of life is the story. The drug is what signaled to the rest of the nation that the end had come.
A way to understand the effect on a family is, imagine a family where one of the parents has a secret lover. So that person has started to care about something very much that is destructive to the family and really has no place. It competes for resources, attention, and love. Except this is the most incredible secret lover in the world. And even when the kids start to hurt and the money that's going to put clothes on their back is disappearing and the other spouse is fighting, the person who's got the meth problem can't give it up. And it's like an irrational, crazy love of something that is absolutely destructive. Another thing you see, particularly with meth, which is really hard to take, is that when people use meth, they are sexually much more uninhibited. And that's part of the appeal for some people to use meth, to have meth and have sex, at a circuit party or something. Some of that inhibition extends to children. So in the child protective services in a lot of these communities, they are overrun with kids who have been sexually abused by their parents who are addicted to meth. And that, of the things I treated in my clinical career, that was always the hardest thing, even for people 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, to get over that violation of trust. It's really fundamental.
It's been hard in America. It's been tough feeling sad. It's been hard in America. I never thought it'd get so bad. I wish that I had a big jet plane, fly the tears away. Maybe I'd find a river so wide and drift away all of the pain. But it seems there's more to do. There's more to love we've yet to find. It's true, we may stumble through, but all we have is precious time. It's hard to see in America, the sand thrown in your eyes. It's hard to speak in America, when every word creates divide. But it seems that we're all the same. We all need love and hope, a little grace. And yeah, it's true, it's so hard to do, to find it all right here in this place.
The thing that probably surprised me is that I started out looking at it like everybody else, which is, this would be 6 years ago, I guess, as isn't it crazy that you can make this drug in your sink? I never, until I got into doing the reporting of this book, which took 4 years, I never put it into any social or economic or political context. And as I began to think of it that way, it became increasingly surprising to me that I had never done it, that I had never looked at that, but that nobody else seemed to be either. Because how can you understand something as pervasive as this if you don't attempt to account for its economics, its sociology, its cultural implications, and the politics that drive it. And so I was a little ashamed of that. But even today, we continue to look at it as something that is a unidimensional. It's just something that's out there. It's just something that people who aren't like us do. And that's part of how it becomes crippling.